Have you ever imagined being lost in a forest under a torrential storm and suddenly coming face to face with a gigantic snake about to attack a defenseless creature? And what if you realize that the only chance to save it depended on you and a group of ordinary, yet courageous people? That's exactly what happened on that rainy night when a group of police officers had to face the impossible. To save a simple sheep. The rain fell relentlessly, turning the forest floor into a slippery quagmire. Thunder roared like invisible monsters, and lightning illuminated for brief moments the macabre scene. Twisted trees, broken branches, soaked leaves, and, at the center of it all, a defenseless sheep surrounded by something straight out of a nightmare. A colossal snake, with scales reflecting the lightning, eyes glowing in shades of red and green, and its mouth wide open, revealing fangs as sharp as knives. Captain Silver, leader of the group of officers, clenched his teeth at the sight of the creature. His heart raced, but his mind worked at full speed. "Everyone, we can't waste time. Every second counts," he said, pointing at the sheep and signaling that they needed to approach carefully. The officers began to advance, but each step was a challenge. The mud made them slip constantly, and the cutting wind brought branches that whipped across their faces. Raindrops blinded their eyes, but none of this could stop the group. Fear was present, but determination was stronger. As they got closer, the snake began to coil tighter, squeezing the sheep even more. It was impossible not to feel the suspense in the air. At any moment, everything could end in tragedy. But the group's courage outweighed the danger. One of the officers, Sergeant Costa, started distracting the snake by throwing branches in its direction, while another, Officer Lima, tried to create a safe escape route for the sheep. Every movement was calculated. Every second mattered. Captain Silver took a deep breath and noticed something no one else had. The snake seemed to react to the sounds of the storm, using the thunder and wind as cover. He signaled for the group to reposition, and together they began coordinating an almost impossible strategy. Two officers would draw the snake's attention, while he and two others would silently approach the sheep to set it free. At that moment, a lightning bolt lit up the entire scene, revealing not only the snake and the sheep, but also the treacherous terrain ahead, a slippery slope and moss-covered rocks that could make anyone fall. The group realized they would need maximum courage and precision. Sergeant Costa made the first bold move, throwing a huge branch toward the snake. The snake dodged, and that was when Captain Silver seized the distraction to run toward the sheep, feeling adrenaline pulse through every vein. Officer Lima was right behind him, ready to hold the animal in case the creature struck again. The sheep trembled with fear, but something in its eyes showed hope. Hope now resting in the hands of those heroes. The snake, realizing the officers were approaching, began to move even faster, its scales gleaming under the lightning, and the sound of the wind mixed with its hissing created a symphony of terror. As they advanced, Captain Silver realized they would need an even greater distraction to free the sheep without getting hurt. He signaled to Officer Lima that it was time for the final plan, but something unexpected happened. Another thunderclap burst directly over a nearby tree, which began to give way, threatening to fall on the team. Now beyond the snake, they had to deal with the forest itself, which seemed to conspire against them. Captain Silver barely had time to react to the crash of the falling tree. Massive branches crashed onto the muddy ground, scattering water and leaves into the air. The team had to throw themselves aside, nearly getting hit, their hearts pounding like drums. The sheep, terrified, bleated loudly, and the snake seized the moment to move faster, coiling around a nearby trunk, ready to strike. "Quick! Now or never!" shouted Captain Silver, making the riskiest decision. He sprinted toward the sheep, dodging branches and mud, feeling every raindrop like needles on his skin. Officer Lima positioned himself right behind, ready to shield and carry the sheep if necessary. Every step felt like defying gravity itself, but their determination was greater than any fear. Sergeant Costa, seeing the snake distracted, decided to risk an even bolder move. He threw not just branches, but an empty backpack, creating a loud noise that echoed through the forest. The snake lunged violently, hissing, and for a moment its attention shifted completely away from the sheep. It was enough. Captain Silver crouched quickly and grabbed the sheep by its sides, feeling the animal's rapid breathing. The creature trembled, but trusted completely in that group that had appeared like a bolt of hope in the midst of the storm. But the snake was not going to give up so easily. With a surprisingly fast movement, it lunged part of its body toward Captain Silver and the sheep, nearly striking them. Adrenaline exploded within the team. Each officer knew that a single mistake could be fatal. Then, in a moment of pure courage, Officer Lima grabbed a stick he had found on the ground and, with all his strength, struck the snake's trunk, deflecting it at the very last second. The animal recoiled slightly, but remained tense and enraged, hissing and circling dangerously close to the sheep. Meanwhile, the rain gave no respite. Lightning continued to illuminate the forest, revealing more details: massive roots that could trap the officer's feet, slippery moss-covered stones, and in the distance, the unsettling feeling that something else in the forest was watching them. Every sound of the storm amplified the danger, and every movement had to be calculated with precision. Captain Silver knew they needed one final distraction, something that could guarantee the sheep's escape without anyone getting hurt. "Caster Lima, trust me and follow my lead. Don't stop until the sheep is safe," he shouted. The group advanced with impressive precision, almost as if each officer were connected by some invisible instinct. The snake coiled tighter and tighter, displaying frustration and brutal strength, but the officers did not back down. Every second felt eternal, and the tension could have been cut with a knife. The sheep, though terrified, began to sense that these humans were its only chance of survival. Its large, gleaming eyes reflected both the storm and hope. The rain intensified, each drop hammering against the officers' helmets and uniforms. Lightning lit the scene in rapid flashes, revealing the terror in the sheep's eyes and the deadly glint in those of the colossal snake. Captain Silver breathed deeply, feeling each heartbeat like the pounding drum of an imminent battle. He knew that any hesitation could cost them dearly. Costa to the left. "Lima, get ready for the next move," he shouted, his voice nearly lost in the roar of the wind. But in that moment, the forest itself seemed alive. Branches cracked, leaves whipped about, and the muddy ground seemed eager to swallow every step they took. Every movement was a risk. One slip, and both the sheep and the men could be lost. The snake, as if sensing the group's strategy, began to advance with astonishing speed. Its scales reflected the lightning, creating the illusion that it was made of pure light and shadow. It lashed out like a whip, trying to snatch any officer who came close to the sheep. Captain Silver, drenched and exhausted, pressed forward with determination. He reached out his arms to grab the sheep, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst from his chest. Officer Lima positioned himself strategically behind him, ready to act at the first sign of danger. Sergeant Costa, in turn, began creating an improvised barrier with branches and stones, diverting the snake's attention. The sheep, feeling the tension, started to struggle, increasing the risk of an attack. But then something almost magical happened. The officers, as if in perfect synchronicity, moved together, each one covering a vital point. The snake, though massive, began to realize it could not strike without exposing itself. And then, in a burst of pure adrenaline, Captain Silver managed to lift the sheep from the muddy ground, holding it tightly against his chest. But the snake still would not relent. With a brutal, lightning-fast motion, it launched part of its body in an attempt to reach the heroes. Officer Lima reacted instantly, striking the snake's trunk with all his might, deflecting it once again at the very last moment. But it wasn't enough to end the threat. The creature retreated only a few meters, coiling again and hissing with a silent, deadly rage. At that moment, a new danger emerged. The nearby slope began to give way, chunks of earth and stone sliding slowly toward the team. Each officer had to balance precariously, feeling the mud slide beneath their feet. The rain, the thunder, the snake, and now the collapsing ground turned the scene into an even more vivid nightmare. The sheep, protected in Captain Silver's arms, seemed to almost understand the gravity of the situation. Its large eyes reflected fear, but also trust. It was as if it knew its only chance of survival was to fully rely on the humans, risking everything for it. Captain Silver looked at his comrades and shouted, "Now, all together, one step at a time. Don't stop until we're out of this." Each officer took a deep breath, feeling adrenaline rush through every vein. With every step the snake advanced, but the team was determined. They would not back down. Lightning illuminated the sky and the scene in an almost cinematic way. Captain Silver holding the sheep, Officer Lima covering the right side, Sergeant Costa distracting the snake, and the forest around them alive, threatening and majestic. Every second felt eternal, as if time had stopped and the tension had reached its breaking point. But something seemed to change in the snake. It hesitated, coiling around a fallen tree, watching the officers intently. It seemed to calculate, almost as if it respected their courage. Captain Silver seized that brief moment of hesitation and began running with the sheep, every step measured, every breath controlled, while Officer Lima and Sergeant Costa kept the snake at bay with improvised tactics and brute force. The roar of the rain and wind mixed with the snake's hissing and the desperate footsteps of the officers. The tension was unbearable. Any wrong move could mean the end. Captain Silver ran with the sheep in his arms, feeling his heart nearly burst from his chest. Each step was a challenge. The muddy ground threatened to make him slip, broken branches whipped against his face, and the wind seemed intent on pushing him back. But he could not stop. He felt his team's eyes on him, trusting that he would carry the sheep out of that nightmare. Behind him, Officer Lima advanced with long strides, using everything he could find along the way. Branches, stones, even pieces of tree trunks to build obstacles and slow the snake. The creature, gigantic and agile, weaved around each barrier with terrifying precision. Its body moved as if it were made of living shadow, reflecting the lightning in a horrifying spectacle. Sergeant Costa, meanwhile, had found a sturdier, heavier trunk and hurled it at the snake. The impact forced the creature to recoil momentarily, but not for long. It whipped its body in a sudden, violent motion, nearly striking Captain Silver. A wet branch hit Costa's face, tearing a cry of pain from him. But he did not retreat. Adrenaline and the urgency of the mission kept him firm. The sheep, sensing the pressure and danger, began to bleat softly, as if pleading for help. Yet somehow that sound fueled the officers' courage. Each bleat was a reminder that they were there to protect the most fragile life in the forest. Then, in the middle of the storm, a lightning bolt lit the scene like a natural spotlight, revealing something no one had noticed before. A small opening between fallen trees, nearly invisible in the darkness. It was the perfect escape route. Captain Silver saw it and, even with fear and exhaustion coursing through his body, shouted to his team, "There! All together now! We can't miss this chance!" The snake, sensing their movement, launched itself once more toward the team. Officer Lima threw himself forward, partially blocking the attack with an improvised log. The impact reverberated through the forest, a deafening crash echoing among the trees, mingling with the rain and thunder. The snake's strength was overwhelming. It was as if nature itself had granted it extra power within that storm. Captain Silver clutched the sheep tighter against his chest, feeling its body tremble with fear but also with trust. He knew he could not fail. Every step toward the opening was a risk, but victory lay just ahead. At that moment, Officer Lima made an unexpected move. He hurled a massive branch to create the ultimate distraction. The snake, momentarily confused, diverted its attack and struck the trunk on the ground, coiling tightly around it to steady itself. That gave Captain Silver the precious seconds he needed to advance a few more meters with the sheep. Sergeant Costa, realizing the opportunity, shouted to rally the team. "Now!" Everyone together. They synchronized every movement, running in unison as if they were a single force against adversity. Each step was calculated, each breath controlled, but the snake, realizing it was losing ground, began moving even more aggressively, lashing its body like lightning toward the opening. Lightning illuminated the scene, revealing the creature's colossal size and the sheer intensity of the danger. The tension was unbearable. The audience, if they were watching, would feel every heavy breath, every raindrop stinging the eyes, every moment as if they themselves were inside the forest, facing the storm alongside the heroes. The sheep, though small and defenseless, seemed to understand that victory depended on the courage of those humans. Its eyes gleamed in the storm, reflecting fear, hope, and complete trust in the team carrying it. Captain Silver glanced quickly at his comrades, feeling a mix of fear and determination. He knew this moment would define everything. One misstep, and it could all end in tragedy. Every muscle in Captain Silver's body burned with effort, but he could not stop. The opening in the forest was in sight, a narrow gap illuminated by lightning, like a portal of hope in the midst of chaos. The snake, realizing it was losing ground, launched itself once more with all its strength. But the team was ready. Officer Lima and Sergeant Costa positioned themselves strategically, blocking and deflecting the giant serpent with improvised branches and logs. The snake hissed furiously, but it could not reach Captain Silver, who pressed forward with the sheep in his arms. Every step was tense, but their determination outweighed any fear. Finally, after seconds that felt like hours, they reached the opening. The sheep, sensing safety, let out a bleat of relief, and the officers drew deep breaths, exhausted, soaked, and covered in mud, but triumphant. The snake, defeated by the team's strategy and courage, retreated into the forest, vanishing into the shadows and lightning. Captain Silver placed the sheep on the ground, and it quickly ran off into the distance, healthy and safe. The team looked at one another, smiles of relief and pride spread across their faces. The rain still poured down, but now it seemed to bless the moment, celebrating courage, unity, and the triumph of life over danger. "We did it. We saved the sheep," said Captain Silver, with a tired but deeply satisfied smile. Each officer knew that night would be remembered forever, a story of courage, hope, and heroism that few would dare to face. And that, dear viewers, is how this incredible adventure ends. Brave heroes facing a giant snake to save a defenseless sheep. A story that reminds us that even in the most dangerous and unpredictable situations, courage, unity, and determination can overcome any obstacle. If you were moved by this story and want to see more epic adventures like this one, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming adventures.